Paul, whoops, I muted you. Awesome. That's the best way to start the podcast, by muting Paul. I'm doing great. Yourself?
I'm happy we're back on this platform because I like our little intro jingle and I can hear it now. I used to put it in afterwards, but now I'm happy that it's back on top.
Yeah. I like the other platform. Like I said, it didn't compress anything, so the quality was a bit better, but it's a little too limiting and required too much post-production. And you know my philosophy on post-production.
You do.
All right. So we're actually officially live also again.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Nobody's online, but that's okay.
All right. We're live. No one's online. All right. We'll have to change that.
I know.
I need to get a better marketing guy.
Oh, burn.
Sorry.
All right. So today we're good. What's that, sorry?
I'm kidding. Fab's a wonderful marketing guy.
You're too kind. Fab's also a busy marketing guy, taking care of other people's marketing.
Even better, exactly. In fact, you say cordonnier mal chaussé, or the cobbler wears no shoes, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Enough about cobblers and marketing. I guess we'll talk about marketing maybe. Today's topic is very sales oriented again. So pipeline reviews. And I think I like the spin that you added to it, is like how to ask the right questions to run a good pipeline review. But let's start at the top for those less familiar with what's a pipeline review. What is a pipeline review?
Well, you know what? That's a really good question, Fab. And it's a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But what I consider a pipeline review is, there's a few things, right? If you run a really good, tight CRM, when you do a pipeline review, it should be about the anomalies, the things that you need help with, the things that are troubling you. So let's make it really simple. Let's say you have to sell one thing a week, one widget a week. Mm-hmm. And to sell one widget a week, you need to make 100 calls and you need to book 10 appointments.
Right.
So the pipeline review could just be, are you managing to do your 100 calls? Are you managing to do your 100 appointments? And is that turning into your one sale a week? And what's blocking you along the way? Of course, Then you'll deep dive into the different stages of your sales process to see where things are stalling. But as a salesperson, I believe the pipeline review should be a lot more about you asking your manager or your colleague or whoever you're doing the pipeline review with help to move things forward or down, let's say, into the pipe. And less about your manager grilling you and trying to find holes and problems, right? And I say this because, yes, we use a CRM. Yes, we write as much as possible, but still there's certain information that is hard to write down. There's certain information that's hard to interpret. And so that's why the pipeline review, in my mind, should really be driven by the salesperson. Now,
interesting,
right? I don't. Do you have any comments on that? Because I know you have a pipeline. You've had a pipeline, and what's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've had my own pipeline, so nobody's reviewing it other than me going like, "Oh man, this stuff isn't moving fast enough." Or, but to me, I've always found it interesting because I've heard a lot about it, but I've never seen it much. Obviously, so I've never been in a sales department, so maybe what's happening behind closed doors. But I've been friends with a lot of salespeople. Like when you're in marketing, especially in B2B, you get along really well with the sales team. And I've never heard of like managers really running deep pipeline reviews with their sales team, or their sales team, like they'll have one-on-ones with managers, but they tend to be about this and that and here and there and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in discovering a bit more.
Having, as we've said this before, I've done a lot of management jobs and I've been, VP and sales director and whatnot. And I'm going to say something here that's not good, but I hate pipeline reviews. I hate them. Because
as a rep or as a manager?
As a rep, I didn't hate it as much because I was in a different place. But as a manager, I hated them because maybe I didn't do them properly, but I felt a lot of people were just, blowing hot air out of their ears. And I also think that a lot of people used to do the pipeline review with all the reps together, and then they go through the accounts. And a lot of it was very mechanical. And I found that it was a waste of time that you could have used in helping educate and train people and coach people to get them better what they did, rather than just going, well, what's this? What's going to happen? It was very, very administrative. It was very just, basically, what's the word I'm looking, bureaucratic. And maybe because I wasn't doing it properly, but to me, a proper pipeline review, like I just said, should be driven. The first question the manager should ask is, okay, where are you having a hard, first of all, you should really know what you need to do, right? So when I said those 100 calls, 10 appointments, 1 sale, that everyone should have that sort of sales drive or sales habit or sales action that sort of tells you where you're at. And you should know your own closing ratio. And some people say, well, it can vary so much. My sales cycle wanders. But you just a little sidebar here, you should really sort of have an idea, whether it's a long sales cycle, short sales cycle, but your idea should come from data that you've amassed. So if you've done sales for a year, you should be looking at all the calls you've done, looking at all the appointments you've done, and you should create some kind of statistical sheet that tells you exactly how these things work. Because then you yourself can look at it and say, wow, my numbers are down. What am I not doing well? Where am I having a hard time to bring my client that's now in stage 1 to stage 2? Why is that taking me so much time? Why is it taking me longer than it used to? What is it that I'm not doing? And this will open the conversations for coaching, for training, for mentoring, whatever it might be, to help you move forward. And that's where I think a pipeline review makes sense. Now, if it's just where are your numbers, you're not hitting your numbers, why aren't you hitting your numbers, you need to make more calls. If you're making more calls, but you're not saying the right things, not going to help.
Right.
So, and, we said it before, it's really hard to do. I've not participated or been in a room where the pipeline reviews have been very well done, or very rarely.
And that's because, if I understand correctly, it's because it's too administrative, right? It's like you're not hitting your numbers, do more calls, or you're hitting your numbers, let's just go for a beer instead, type of thing.
Or you have 10 people in the room and you're just going through the numbers, and you're missing this great opportunity to share what people have learned or what's helped them move forward, or you're missing this great opportunity to help people move forward themselves, whether through the role play of a difficult situation or one of the people sharing something they've discovered, real valuable information. Kind of like when you watch a really good YouTube TED Talks and you're like, whoa, I got good stuff from that, I'm taking notes. Well, how many times do people feel like that after a pipeline review? And I know that certain things are important, right? So if you're in a large public company and your manager needs to give a pipeline review to sort of say, well, what are we thinking is moving forward? But your CRM should be doing that. If you're smart about the way you're using your CRM, your manager should be able to go into the CRM and say, okay, this is what it looks like, right? So, but then again, I'll probably get a lot of flack from a lot of people here, and I'll bring it forward. I like, I like controversy. But I think pipeline reviews, if they're done intelligently, are about helping the individual representative move the business down the pipeline into a closed situation. But there's a few things that need to happen. First, you need to have a good CRM. You need to have a very good sales process. You need to understand your sales process, and you need to know your own data, the own salesperson's data. Like I said, 100 calls, 10 meetings, 1 sale on average. And if that year's off, what's going on? Well, maybe with COVID, it's thrown everything off. You're doing something that was very, I don't know, you're an event. You were an event company. Well, I'm sorry, during COVID, events didn't happen the same way. So, you're not doing the same close ratio. Those are things you need to take into consideration.
Gotcha.
And as a manager, when you're doing the pipeline review, you need to ask the right questions. And this is one thing that I've rarely seen it done. I tried to do it. I'm not even sure I did it well. You know what? I don't think I did it well either. The manager gets pressure from the VP. The VP gets pressure from the CEO. The CEO gets pressure from the shareholders, the board. And a lot of people, where are the results? Where are the results? Where are the results? So often it boils down to the salesperson saying, I'm doing this. It boils down to the salesperson when they're doing the pipeline review, bullshitting, covering the past, rather than saying what's really in their way so that the manager can really help them move forward. But the manager is more likely to say, well, I'm going to cut you off and throw you out rather than try to help them move forward, right?
Right.
And you need to create that safe environment where the pipeline review is really about how can we help you move that stuff down the pipeline. So I've covered a lot of stuff here, and I'll let you talk. What do you think of all that?
No, I think it's good. I think you said one thing that was fun because that was interesting. I mean, you said a lot of interesting things, but one thing that stood out for me was you kind of look at the anomalies, right? Because you do know your numbers, right? 100 calls, one meeting, or 100 calls, 5 meetings, 1 closing, whatever your numbers are. But then so you can see like if you're kind of all of a sudden, at like 200 calls, 5 meetings, like what's going on, or if you're looking at one deal that's like at stage 1, and normally you have a 50% conversion from stage 1 to stage 2, but one's but all of a sudden like that it's that there's it's bumping up or whatever, or if one state normally it's like I don't know 7 days in stage 1, and all of a sudden you have a deal that's there for like 13 days. Like what's going on? Like so finding that anomaly, I think that's really really interesting way of putting it, and I think that's I think you're right. I think there's not a lot of enough emphasis put on helping the salesperson. It's just really about do your numbers, and it's like some random statement almost, right? It's like a marketing manager going like, hey, generate more leads. Like,
yeah, why aren't you hitting your numbers? And I'll give you a very concrete sort of, I heard this on a podcast last year, and I'm sorry, person who put this out there, forget who it is. I'm terrible at this. You can quote me without remembering me either if you want. I heard something really great that was, as salespeople, sometimes when they come in and they're a little bit less knowing of the business, they'll ask more questions. They'll take their time. They'll be more. They'll ask more open questions because they're like, I don't know the answers to this, so I'm just going to find out as much from the client. And actually serves them well, right? Because the client feels, oh, this person's asking a lot of questions. They're finding out a lot more. And as we become a little bit more confident, sometimes you start asking less questions. You say, okay, I've seen this before, and I know we can do this, this, and that. And then their sales numbers start going up, right? So in that specific case, let's take that as an example. So the manager that doesn't know how to do proper pipeline reviews say, hey, George, your numbers used to be better. They're going down. Bring that up. What are you doing? Are you slacking off, whatever. And George is working just as hard, and it's just not happening, whereas it should be, George, what's happening? And then the salesman should ask questions. So what are you doing in your sales process? They should be doing role plays to figure out what's going on from stage 1 to stage 2 or stage 3 to stage 4, whatever it might be. Find out and really try to help the person go forward. It's almost like if you went to the doctor and you said, hey, man, your blood pressure is high. I want you to bring that blood pressure down, okay? I'll see you next time. Okay.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, I'm going to go home and, honey, I got to bring my blood pressure down. Okay, I'm going to do that.
Yeah. That's a great analogy.
So essentially, a true good pipeline review, if it's high level, can just be, look, I've got, again, $1 million in my pipeline. According to my closing ratio, this should turn into $100,000, right?
Right.
And then, okay, where are you having a hard time? What's going on? What are you trying to? What are your objectives? How are you getting there? Because there's this thing that I stole and made up. It's called objectives, habits, systems, and actions. Call it OSHA. And it's a great guy called James Clear, and he talks about habits and action. I just put in there because if you have your objectives, it's great, right? And then you should have a system, right? Your system, this is totally taken from James Clear. Thanks, James. And your system is what habits and what things you do and what actions you do to achieve those objectives. Ideally, you should be forgetting about your objectives and just doing the things that are necessary to get there. So a pipeline review is sort of like, it's sort of the result of the actions of what you're doing. So if something's going wrong, well, what are the habits? What are the things you're saying? Where is it not functioning? Or keep doing what's going well, right?
Yeah.
And if you share and you do a role play, you can help the other people on your team to move forward. So to boil it back down to your original question, I personally today, when I'm coaching leaders, tell them to really focus on the actions, right?
Right.
Then you got to teach the competencies that the people need to have to do the proper actions. Because, if you're doing a bunch of cold calls, but you're saying, hey, my name's George, buy my product, you need to have the competencies. So what's your what's your system? What's your methodology? What kind of methodology? Now, there's a lot of great methodologies out there: consultative sales, there's counter sales, there's a bunch of stuff. There's you just go on the internet for about half an hour and you'll get like a bazillion different sales methodologies. That a lot of them are great, some of them are older. All that to say, but once you know that methodology and you understand it, then your pipeline review should drill down into where you're having problems, because just looking at the numbers is very, to me, old school and doesn't make sense. It's like it's a shareholder thing. And, bring the value of the shares up. Okay, so we'll fire a bunch of, and that's where you get some really silly things happening. So let's fire everyone. Then the revenue will go up for a couple of months, and our share will go up. We can cash out, and so I'm very weary and leery of a good pipeline review, because I think it needs to be done for the right thing. And if your salespeople know that you're just doing the review to try to give upper management some numbers, they don't feel like you're helping them out. They don't think you're doing something to help them out, and they need to feel that. If they don't, they're just going to cover their asses and blow steam out of their ears. And
it's almost kind of the garbage in, garbage out, right? If they feel that you're bringing in garbage, like they're just going to come out, and then they're just it's just a vicious cycle afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes the pipeline review becomes defensive rather than helpful.
Yeah.
And to me, a pipeline review should always be helpful, but it's a big thing. I mean, if you've got 100 clients in your pipeline, and so you should look at it, and also a pipeline review can be cleaning up. Like I just did this with a client a few months ago. We looked at all the ABC clients. So how do you define your A clients? How do you define your B clients? And let's try to make the C's become B's, or let's try to make the C's become F's.
Yeah. That's interesting. No, I like that. And you're right. Obviously, if you have a big pipeline because either you're quite successful or maybe your model is just to have more volume or whatnot, I think then I think it's also, like you said, it's up to the rep, right? Like, yes, you have your numbers and the data is important and whatnot, but it's also what I like that you said, it's about the rep as well. So if the rep is like, if she feels like this opportunity, it's fitting within the numbers, right? Like, but there's a challenge with them. Like I can't seem to be asking the right questions. Like I can't, I can, or whatnot. Like it allows them to bring something forward that the data might not always show either, right?
Exactly. And you can't dissociate pipeline review or data review from activity and methodology and attitude, right? You can't.
Right.
I mean, if you try to do that, you're, if you're just looking, hey, George, you did a great job, your pipeline looks clean and, you've got what it takes. That's wonderful. And that's okay. But you're not really helping them move forward. You don't understand what it is that they need to be motivated by.
Right.
So when we decided to talk about this subject, part of me, it makes the hair on my back curl up, because I've got to be honest, 99.9% of the pipeline reviews that I had to deal with in the past were often based on poor management style, more of a authoritarian approach.
Yeah. No, and I, like I said, like obviously, like I've never been in a sales department. I've always worked with them, but it's always been my impression. Like I hear a lot about pipeline review, but then I've never seen or heard a rep talking about how great their pipeline review was. And you're right. Sometimes it's just, like before the end of the quarter, everybody just gets into a room and they talk about the pipeline and they're trying to see like, what can we close this quarter to make it like it. It just becomes about playing catch up and stuff like that.
And listen, I'll be devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
You've got a company and you're trying to forecast the next quarter, right? And you've asked all your managers and all your sales leaders to sort of give you an idea of where they think things are going to close. Truthfully and honestly, if you have a really good CRM, again, that data should just be coming out quick.
Be there.
But what a lot of salespeople don't do properly is use the CRM properly.
Right.
And that's why you're having that that's why the managers are saying, okay, I know it says 10 million in the CRM, but tell me what it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we've talked about that before, right? And that's just because you're not setting up your CRM as a way to help the salespeople. So they're kind of using it as okay, it's Friday afternoon, data entry time. I'm going to go update the CRM. That clearly means it's not helpful for them, right? They're not.
Okay. Exactly. It's not helpful. And let me give you a very, very specific answer. Okay. I worked at a company in it was just before the teens. So between, just before 2010, we'll say in 2008, 2009. And I remember I had about 15 people on my team at the time. And we used to have regular meetings. I'd been there for 3 years, and we used to have regular meetings. And a lot of our business was most of our business was based on recurring revenue, and we try to up our margins and shares every year. So what I'd done, I'd talk to everyone individually, see how it could help them out, and they'd do a review with them, and they'd give me a forecast. And usually the individual forecasts were wacky. But what I'd notice is when you looked at all the people together, and I looked at where they were last year at the same time, I could extrapolate where they were going to finish at the end of the quarter. So I'll give you an example. So in January, for example, if I saw that, January, February, March, let's say at the end of January, and I'm just throwing, I don't remember exactly, but let's say at the end of January, they were at 50% of quota for the year, for the quarter, I knew that they would hit the quarter, because the year before they were like at 49%. And the year before that, they were at 51%. And I could see that they'd always hit the number. So because of large numbers, and it was a recurring business in a very static industry, I could literally get a real forecast. Now, did I go and do a pipeline review with every individual account and say, no, because that was about 100 or 150 accounts. But the law of average, it's sort of like if you ask, what is it again? If you ask 1,000 people the weight of a horse, they'll most likely guess it. They'll come really close to it. So the law of averages made it such that when I looked at that data, I could extrapolate. Now, if I'd done a pipeline review at a micro level, it's really hard to predict because a lot of things can happen. Data becomes more precise, and every scientist knows this as you amass, and you know this, as you amass more data. So if you really aren't looking to project, if you know in there, that's because I knew the close ratio, right? I knew how many meetings people were doing. I know how much money was out there, and I knew the closing ratio, and I could tell just by the numbers where we would end up. And then then we could apply that and see, hey, look, last year we were ahead by 3%, and we hit quarter. So what's happening? What are the activities? What can we do? Where are problems? Where's the low hanging fruit? Where's the longer sales cycle that we can maybe develop and turn it into something that has success? So and back then it worked well, right? And it was a good time in the business that I was, and there's a little bit of luck there, and we had a good product, and so things worked out well. But it was really fun because it was a system that worked because it was based on real achievable numbers. I wasn't asking people to blow steam out of their ears, because even if they'd said, okay, which accounts are going to be the ones that come through, I would have said, I can't tell you. Right. I can tell you the law of averages, and statistically speaking. So that pipeline review gave the shareholders what they needed, and it worked, right? Right. When you go down more into the micro, then you need to say, what are the actions we need to do to make sure these things happen? Right. Or to try to maximize. And that's what a pipeline review should be. What are you doing? What are your stages look like? And what can you do to where's the nugget? Where's the big chunk stuck in your funnel? What is it that's holding things back from flowing through? Amazing. Listen, it's been 25 minutes, so we're gonna call it quits. But no, that's been interesting, and hopefully people got away with something. But let's say you had to wrap it up in like a less than a minute. Like I'm a sales manager. I need to run pipeline reviews. What should I do? First thing I'd say is, what is the objective of your pipeline review for you? What's the information you're looking to get? Make sure you share that with your team, and make sure you connect those objectives you have to their objectives. If they don't see a purpose to your pipeline review, you'll always blow hot steam. If they feel that by giving you the proper information, it's helping them and you're helping them, well, then it'll work. Right. Amazing. Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Fab. Talk to you next week.